Hello and welcome back to CBR MTG. My name is Angus Mackay and we are at the finals. You see there with the trophy, Justin taking a big long glance at that trophy, just imagining it in his hands. For the first time ever, there have been no Canberrans in the top two, with Justin coming from Sydney and Paul coming from Melbourne. By the way, I'm joined here once again by Philip Nicholson.
Hi. I think probably it was just a really hot day and Justin was just thinking about how much water he could fit in that trophy and how nice it would be to take a nice big sip.
Oh, good. Taking a sip of wind juice is the best kind of sip. And we've had Paul on the last couple of matchups, watching him make his way through the top 8 with his deck Kess Pile, of which there was maybe 4 Melbourneites who brought the same 60 to the table for this event. Obviously trying very hard, working together to figure out the best configuration of cards that they could play.
I believe there were 6 Melbourneites with the exact same 60 and 10 Kess Pile decks in total throughout the room.
Okay, I mean that's not too bad. I
No,
mean, considering the big weekend where the win percentage of Kess Pile was very, very high with, I'm not 100% sure how many were in the room, but there was definitely 5 in the top 8, which is an extremely large number. There have been a points change since then to upgrade the other matchups, so aggro got a little bit of a bump with Strip Mine being down to 1 point, and back to basics to try and, I guess, hamper the Blue Moon strategy, going back down to 0 points from 1. So it's good to see how Kess Pile is doing in the brand new meta with a slightly more aggro curve. And speaking of aggro curves, we have Justin back at it again on Rug Tempo, which we have seen him on the battlefield a couple of times as well throughout the day. This rug deck has been absolutely crushing it so far, and Justin's proving that by taking it all the way to the finish line at in the top 2. So we'll see a timer growth from Justin's side. Nothing too exciting from Paul's side, leading on the fumarole, fetching up something for this Terminate, which seems pretty reasonable. I mean, if he has the days, no, it looks like he doesn't have the days, but he could have got blown out a little bit. I mean, wasting a removal spell so you can play days is definitely fine for Justin.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, but if you let Justin untap, then suddenly he's got all the counterspells in the world, not just days.
Sure.
So
yeah,
it's not like Paul has a better alternative line. It's unlucky if Justin has days. It happens.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely reasonable. Justin's deck, no shortage of counterspells in it. Helps him get his way through the early game against combo and sort of protect himself a little bit against other counterspells. But all Justin wants to do is stick a large creature and ride it out until the end. But Paul's strategy is just a little bit different, where he's trying to control the game in the early stages and then play out 1 or 2 win cons to finish off the game, just as all good control decks do.
Yeah. So Justin's just kind of firing off an end-step brainstorm here. He's going to shuffle away some cards he doesn't want with his Misty Rainforest.
Yeah, it looked like a fetch land was amongst one of them. Probably just wanted to prevent himself from getting land screwed. You see the power of Brainstorm. I mean, this is no secret to anyone, but Brainstorm is a great combo with fetch lands, because you can draw 3 fresh cards, put back 2 bad cards, and then shuffle them away, never to be seen again.
Yeah, there's definitely a few instances with Brainstorm where you shuffle away some cards with your fetch land, and it feels almost like Brainstorm just says draw 3 cards.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's obviously not quite that good, but there are occasions when it does feel like it.
Yeah. Which is pretty funny in comparison to when you don't have a fetch land and Brainstorm feels like one of the worst cards in your hand,
Yeah, when you're trying to dig for something, you don't see it, and now you know your next 2 draws, and everything's miserable.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I wonder if Justin's looking to punch off this mental misstep even paying mana for it, which is very interesting. But trying to keep that click alive as early as possible seems pretty reasonable. If he gets to untap with it, this is at the end of Paul's turn, if I'm not mistaken. So if he gets to untap, he does have that counterspell in hand. And also he gets to have a little looky-loo at Paul's hand to see what he's up against. So this seems like a pretty correct line.
Yeah, so he's just opting for the Vendilion Clique end of turn rather than draw step. So the kind of the draw step clique is usually a play for combo where you're worried about them having maybe 1 or 2 cards, but against a control deck where, you know, any number of like 3 or 4 drops, you know, like a Planeswalker or something like that could come out, and they're all kind of equally threatening. You'd rather leave your mana open to counter whatever it is Paul does decide to run out. And if he doesn't run anything out, then you can just Vendilion Clique end of turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, it's nice to just have that information as well. Like, now Justin knows what he has to play around and how he's going to beat the hand that Paul's constructed.
Yeah, I mean, he also now has Paul tapped out for his next turn, and he can see that he's kind of safe to tap out, and all he's really got to worry about is like a Gomag Angler.
Yeah,
or
which is great.
Maybe a Snapcaster Bolt. So long as he plays something big and resilient enough to deal with that, you know, if he's got a Chandra Torch of Defiance that he can run out here or something like that, then it's completely safe to just throw it out here.
What a wonderful coincidence, because that is one of the cards in Justin's hand. He does have a Bolt, a Counterspell, and a Chandra, but I think this is probably the best time to play the Chandra. I mean, just go uptick and say go, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he knows that he can't have it destroyed by a Dreadbore or something like that, unless it, you know, was the card he pulled drew off Clique or draws next turn, but it's not very likely. And the number of and Paul doesn't even have a creature in play or anything like that to threaten the Chandra with combat damage.
Yeah.
So unless he can kind of get to a fumarole point, the Chandra's pretty likely to do a lot of work, and she ults really quickly. I think it's only a -7.
Yeah.
To give you that really, really disgusting emblem, which if anyone doesn't know, Chandra's emblem has whenever you cast a spell, you can deal 5 damage to any target.
Which is a lot of damage.
Yeah. Particularly given the spell doesn't even have to resolve.
Yeah.
So you just can do whatever you want, basically. It's one of those ultimates that is just really hard to lose once you've done that.
Yeah. It's basically down tick you win the game, which is pretty important. I mean, this is the Chandra that saved Chandras for everyone, because I think before the pickings for a competitive Chandra were pretty slim. I mean, you had the
Pyromaster.
Pyromaster was okay. I was thinking of what's the 6-mana one that makes 3/1 elementals?
Flamecaller.
Yeah. Flamecaller was okay.
Flamecaller and Pyromaster are both okay, and Torch of Defiance, on the other hand, is a legacy staple.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely, just a huge haymaker. Perfect amount. Protects herself. Has 2 upticks, which is pretty relevant as well. Just an all-around great card.
Yeah. Also just the ability to threaten your opponent's life total through pretty wide variety of kind of prison pieces. You know, can hit someone through a ley line, can hit someone through any kind of board state of blockers, can kind of attack through an ensnaring bridge and things like that.
Yep.
Is all pretty nice text to have on a Magic card.
We see Paul just trying to stem the bleeding of Chandra, making sure that she does not ultimate in time, especially while Justin's tapped out. I mean, Paul did find that Baleful Strix allowed him to draw a fresh card, but yeah, I mean, he had to do what he had to do. It might not be an ideal line, but at least he'll be able to attack with the Snapcaster Mage and maybe even the Baleful Strix to try and take out this Chandra, just to get it off the table, because as we mentioned before, as we gushed over how incredibly powerful she is, you want to get her off the table as soon as possible.
Yeah, but Justin does have a lot of cards in his hand. Looks like he's opted to uptick Chandra for mana here.
Ooh.
So he can run out the Spellseeker.
Are we just taking Time Walk here?
I mean, it's possible, but Time Walk in this board state doesn't really do that much.
That's true.
So maybe he wants to find Time Walk, but still have mana open for the other spells that he's got in his hand. So he's got a Lightning Bolt and an Izzet Charm. So you know, if he finds this, like Spellseeker can block Snapcaster Mage, and he can kind of keep Chandra at pace, or if he decides to block and bolt the Baleful Trick, so he can keep Chandra going up.
Yeah.
Depending on exactly how he decides to play it all out, and he doesn't have to run the time walk out here. He can just kind of hold it onto it.
Yeah.
If he wants to.
He is susceptible to hand disruption, which would be an absolute beating if you were going.
He's got counterspell.
Yeah, sure. Maybe he's just willing to leave it up. Well, we'll have to see.
Looks like he's happy to snap it off here. Thinks getting another Chandra activation, another draw step, is all worth it.
Yeah, I mean, Justin's playing Regrowth as well, as we mentioned in a previous video, so it's not completely unlikely that he could untap or uptick with Chandra and find the Regrowth so that he can get the Time Walk back and kind of keep going like that. But sometimes just the untap ability is the untap draw card ability is kind of just good enough, you know.
Yeah, I mean, when it also resets your Planeswalker, it kind of. People sometimes joke about Time Walk being an Explore, but when it's an Explore that says you can activate all your Planeswalkers again, that's really, really good.
Different story.
Yeah,
absolutely. We'll see what's going on.
And Snapcaster hit Mage here.
Ooh, so Snapcaster for Time Walk is fantastic.
Yeah, that's
probably the best case scenario.
Well, I think Regrowth is slightly better because then Time Walk's still in your graveyard, but sometimes you can't have everything you want. You just get like 90% of what you want. Yeah, it seems like it's pretty hard to be Justin in this moment and miss Regrowth on that Chandra Plus.
Yeah, it looks like we're just going to get in. Spellsync is a 1/1 or
it's a 1/1.
Okay, cool.
There's no point not attacking.
Yeah.
You're happy with the trade. You're happy with 1 point of damage.
Literal no downside.
Yeah.
Okay, that's reasonable. Looks like Justin's going to just snap off this fetch here as well. Not worried about any future shuffle effects that might be required, just kind of looking to thin out his library to get any more influential spells out of his deck.
Yeah, well, I think with the Brainstorm gone, the only thing left that he would need to worry about shuffles would be something like a Brainstorm. I mean, there'd be some like Ponder Piles and Preordains where maybe you decide later you want to shuffle something away, but it's pretty fringe.
I think Jason Mind Sculptor is probably the only reasonable one.
Yeah.
But if you're drawing a Jason Mind Sculptor anyway, you're probably pretty happy.
Yeah.
No matter the circumstance.
I think it's certainly fine to just throw the fetch off there to kind of thin that deck out.
But that was very powerful. I quite like this line. I'm not 100% sure how I like Chandra in a counterspell deck, but it seems to be working pretty well for him. Ooh, is this Price of Progress?
That is. That's a lot of damage.
That's a lot of damage for both players as well. I mean,
it's only
six
to Justin.
6 and then 8.
It's still a lot. It's an interesting thing with the rug tempo or rug life deck that you do play 3 colors in your Price of Progress deck. It's definitely a card that you sometimes sideboard out, but
if it can get
kind
dangerous,
of a lot of the time you just operate under the assumption it's going to hurt your opponent way more than it's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
And that's usually true.
I mean, it's a combo with Gush as well.
I mean, you can combo it with Gush, you can combo it with Daze. You know you're playing it, so you can kind of play around it a bit more. Despite the deck being in 3 colors, none of the mana costs are super greedy.
Yeah.
Or not none of them, but it doesn't have very many. You know, it's not playing this huge glut of cards that cost all 3 colors.
Yeah.
Or even 2 at the same time. There's really only a couple that actually do that. If you're kind of scanning his graveyard and his battlefield, I believe Izzet Charm is the only multicolored spell at all. So you can definitely get away with playing, kind of fetching out only basics.
Yeah, for sure. It looks pretty dire straits for Paul. I mean, he's Justin's left himself open for Wandering Fumarole, but I think that's probably the least of his problems, considering Fumarole will put Chandra to 1 and then
Chandra to 1 or Justin to 5, but neither of those things is dead.
Yeah. Okay. Seems like a pretty apt attack from Justin, considering now Paul's definitely dead on board if he doesn't do something, and it might just not be enough. Doesn't look very happy with this preordained pile that he's constructed here, but I mean, he's got a couple of cards in hand. The game's not over yet, but it looks pretty bad for Paul, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, he saw a Badlands that he put to the bottom, which kind of had no text, so it's not exactly what he was hoping to see. He was probably hoping to see Electrolyze or Fire Ice.
It was really funny that Price Progress kind of only did 2 more damage to Paul than it did Justin, but it makes a difference now that Paul's on 4 as opposed to 12 that he would have been on if he didn't take 8 damage.
Yeah, I mean, when you couple it, well, he would have still taken 2 from the Chandra Plus if
for sure,
it hadn't been cast. But when Justin has that onboard creature suite that you can play around with, as well as that Chandra that's still kind of constantly threatening Paul's life total, casting that Price Progress is definitely a pretty heads-up play. I think Justin opting to not cast a Kicked Burst Lightning and hope to end the game is also a pretty heads-up play.
Yeah. And he has all the counter spells in his hand.
He's got all the counter spells he needs. He's got a fine creature state. So long as Chandra doesn't die, she can still uptick and kill next turn. I think that casting a Burst Lightning there would have been pretty greedy, and Justin
not too
intelligently decided to just sit back and let Chandra do her thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Chandra being a source of card advantage was something that may have been overlooked to begin with, but it's seeing its full power now, and especially in the Legacy format, you really get a good feeling about how strong that card is. Alright, going into the sideboards now. It looks like Justin's sort of thumbing... what's he thumbing to the front? Not a whole lot. Keeping it secret from the viewers at home, but Paul's taken that Cryptic Command to the front, which is not too dissimilar from what he did before when he brought in Blood Moon, but I don't think he wants to bring in Blood Moon on this matchup.
No, I think he's just looking at taking out some of the bigger, more expensive cards that are a little bit slow, because with a tempo deck, you don't want your Cryptic Commands and your Mystic Confluences countered by a Spell Pierce.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a great way to lose the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you try to kind of want to keep yourself as low to the ground and cheap and efficient as you can be.
Yeah,
so that
for
you're
sure.
not getting yourself blown out in those ways, and then you can kind of try and contend with them in the same way that they're doing with you, until you can kind of round the corner and close the game out with the few big threats that you do decide to keep in.
Yeah, absolutely. In the sideboards, once again, on Paul's side, we have Anger of the Gods, Blood Moon, Duress, Fairy Macabre, Flusterstorm, Grim Lavamancer, Hydroblast, Kalidas, Trader of Get, Magus of the Moon, Nihil Spellbomb, Nullrod, Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, Submerge, and Young Pyromancer. And then on Justin's side, we have Abrade, Anger of the Gods, Arc Trail, Blue Elemental Blast, Destructive Revelry, Flusterstorm, Hydroblast, Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, Relic of Progenitus, Seed Time, Submerge, Sylvan Library, Tormod's Crypt, and Trigon Predator. We mentioned this in a previous video. We neglected to mention it from a previous video, but man oh man, do I hope that Justin brings in Seed Time in this matchup.
Well, if you're putting it in your sideboard, then you probably intend to bring it in some kind of matchup, and blue control decks would be the matchup.
That's it. You heard this first. Justin, bring it in.
Well, bring it in here or cut it from your sideboard.
Yeah, I can agree with that. This is, for anyone who doesn't know, Seed Time is a 1 and a green instant that says you can only cast it in your opponent's turn.
In your turn.
You can only cast it in your turn, and you can take an extra spell after this one if an opponent casts a blue spell this turn. So you do it in response to your opponent's end of turn Brainstorm, do it in response to your opponent's counter spells. There's a lot of abilities that come with Seed Time, but it's very, very, very ill known considering how old it is of a card coming out of what set is that? It's definitely Judgment.
Yeah, it's a bit of a flavor fail that it doesn't actually give your hippo creatures flying like the flavor text implies, but.
It has nothing to do with seeds.
Taking an extra turn after this one is probably a little bit better than your hippos getting flying.
Yeah, I would feel like that might be a sub-clause to the already good card, but the card was good enough. They didn't need to give their hippos flying as well.
Feldergriff once again snubbed.
We can't all be so lucky, but Hippo Tribal coming for Philip's next video, so keep an eye on that one. Looks like we're shuffling up for game 2. I think Paul's probably still pretty confident. I mean, he saw the power of Justin's deck and he saw about as good as it can be, but Paul's been running really hot and his deck is good and he's a good player, so he might be able to sneak this win away from Justin. Justin being one of the very few Sydney-siders that were successful in today's in this CanCon event. Sydney kind of getting the less Highlander visibility than Melbourne and Canberra, but Justin's a really great player, and it's really good to see him face off on this Eternal format.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate that Sydney just doesn't have as much of a Highlander scene as Canberra and Melbourne, but it's always good to see people from whatever city or town they hail from coming out to these big events.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
giving it a go, and in some cases making it all the way to the finals.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just really good to see. I mean, we've seen people from Wollongong as well, just starting up a team, and then apparently there's some places internationally that's starting up with their Highlander adventures. Just sitting in a play group with your friends with proxy cards, it's pretty easy to start it off, but it's an incredibly fun format, and I can imagine seeing it in this sort of light where you're seeing like Grixis Control, which is a multi-format sort of archetype staple, like played in Modern, Legacy. Highlander, not so much Vintage. I think that's sort of reserved for Jeskai if you were sort of go that down that road.
It was a thing a few years ago.
Okay.
And I think it's kind of fallen out of favor a bit because of the power of Monastery Mentor, and then people realizing that having Rest in Peace in your sideboard was really good.
Yeah, I can imagine that Dredge being a very, very large part of the format. But seeing a Grixis deck being as powerful as it possibly can, while still being singleton versus Rug Delver, which was had its time in the sun in the Legacy format, like also be at the top of its game in a singleton format. Like this is truly powerful Magic you're saying right here, folks.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty true that if there is a deck in Magic in any format, especially a fair deck, you can probably build it in some form in Highlander.
Yeah.
No matter what that deck may be, which leads to a lot of brewing opportunities. And then obviously Highlander also has its own glut of various spicy brews from a large number of members of the community who love putting piles of trash together and seeing what sticks.
I think it's it's just part of growing up, in the Highlander format, is that you make a really bad deck, you proxy it up. I mean, I proxied up something really recently. It will never get to the stage where it becomes real cards, or I will never try it out, but it was fun to play.
Yeah, I mean,
at least until I brew something else.
I think if you consider your growing up in Highlander proxying up one bad deck that you brewed yourself, you've done pretty well for yourself. I think I did 3 or 4.
All right. But some of them
train wreck garbage piles before I brewed my first good deck.
Yeah, definitely a coming of age story for sure, because Highlander is the Brewers format as well. I mean, we're watching 2 decks that are pretty well established in other formats, so not exactly brewing, but still seeing some interesting cards, of course. But the idea when someone says, I'm not sure what deck I want to play, the first thing I say to them is, what is your favorite strategy? Because you can just rebuild that in Highlander.
Yeah, definitely. And then you get to see some kind of interesting, weird fringe cards you might not see in those formats otherwise. You never see your Kesses and your Izzet Charms in kind of these other formats. But in Highlander, these kind of cards that aren't quite good enough to make it in Modern or Legacy and fall to the wayside are staples, because you only get to play one of all the best cards.
Yeah.
So
it really
got to slam with the rest as well.
Absolutely. It really puts a high price on cards like Mental Note, which are played in no format, but because they're so old and hard to get, you're willing to play the second copy of Thought Scour because it's like kind of okay, Fuels Delve, blah, 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 but like these things come bizarrely Highlander staples because they're just impossibly hard to find, but like just good enough to play.
Yeah, and it's kind of why it's always exciting with a new set to see what new cards have been printed that kind of do the same thing as an older card in a little bit of a different way, because with a Highlander deck you're always looking for that, changing out the old version for the new, or just getting to play both versions. We'll see if Paul, it looks like he's opting to
let go of this Sylvan Library. So let go of this Force of Will to take down the Sylvan Library. Probably a pretty wise decision from Paul's side, considering the power of Sylvan Library as a whole. But I mean, Justin pulled while we were gushing again over how wonderful Highlander is as a format. Justin was surgically constructing his turn in a way that played around the most things, and it didn't work for him, I suppose. Like, Grim Lavamancer baiting out the counterspell, taking it nice and slow so he could play that Sylvan Library and hope that it sticks, and then he ends the turn and he has nothing left in play, because that's what Kess Pile does, you know, it just removes good cards from your deck and from your hand.
Yeah, sure, but on the other hand, he is up a card from the exchange. He did he did trade his Sylvan Library for 2 cards, which is kind of what you're playing Sylvan Library to do in a lot of ways. So it kind of accomplished its goal of generating card advantage. Not in the same kind of long-term grindy way that you expect it to, but you know, it's still, that exchange could have gone a lot worse for Justin.
Yeah.
And you know, Grim Lavamancer eats a removal spell, but that means maybe the next creature doesn't. So
Yeah, absolutely.
It's, you know, you never really expect your first creature in this kind of tempo deck to stick around if you don't leave the mana open to protect it, which kind of means if you've got more creatures in your hand, you lead those. You're more happy to lead out creatures into the removal spells, and if you're a creature light, counterspell heavy hand, sometimes you lean a bit later into the game. But with a Tarmogoyf, Grim Lavamancer, and a Young Pyromancer all available to Justin, he was kind of happy to run the first 2 into removal spells, and then
Pave the way.
Pave the way for Young Pyromancer to just kind of hang out, do its thing with this Remand to protect it, and the Lightning Bolt to kind of make a leftover friend if Young Pyromancer does have to die at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he's never going to get into the situation where he doesn't make a token out of this exchange, because he does have the Bolt in hand, and I'm pretty sure, as you said before, he has the Remand. So if he plays anything, we can probably easily remand it. This is not the greatest remand that you've ever seen in your life, but
it's not a fantastic spell to remand. It does still, if Justin does decide to cast it here, it would still draw a card. It would still make that token. But I think that if Justin decides that he really wants that token left over, maybe the Bolt's the better play.
Yeah,
does a bit of
I wouldn't mind
damage to
just
face.
bolting his face, and just letting this go. He is going to opt to force him to cast it again. At least it gets him to draw a card, which means that he might be able to draw into a better removal spell. A better counter spell. So, I mean, there's no reason for Paul not to play it again, because it is free. It is a free card to play.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, maybe Justin's just hoping to draw into a Red Blast of some kind here.
yeah, absolutely. The options are slim, though, unfortunately. But, I mean, this is good enough. Yeah, so remanding it, we did end up at the turn with 2 tokens. Bolt to the face, pretty aggressive, but when you've got Young Pyromancer, it seems to be okay. We will be putting Young Pyromancer back on top of our opponent's deck for the time being. And I think we're not left with much in hand from Justin's side, but Paul might be ready to turn the corner soon. He's just got to get rid of these last couple of creatures, and then he can start playing his own threats.
Yeah, I mean, Justin does have a pretty hefty amount of power on the battlefield. It is 4, which is nothing to be sneezed at, as well as the Young Pyromancer that Paul knows is in hand.
Yeah. Yeah, Snap Custom Mage on top. Snap Custom Mage, good with Submerge. I mean, you
You have to pay 5 mana to cast Submerge
of
with
course.
Flashback, so
It's not even...
it's not mission briefing.
Not mission briefing. Pathetic. I'm so used to the high power level of mission briefing that I've just completely forgotten about Snap Custom Mage.
Well,
yeah,
certainly an opinion.
It's definitely an opinion that you're allowed to have. It looks like Paul's considering whether or not he wants to remove one of the creatures from the board, or if he's just going to let it go. He doesn't really have that many options, if I'm looking correctly, with a Flusterstorm and a Pyroblast and an unknown card. Justin does have Vendilion Click, if I'm not mistaken, in hand.
I think that's the card he drew from hand.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah, he's just gonna let it go. Take the 4. Justin's gonna let him. Justin's gonna replay this Pyromancer. Still leaving up some mana, just in case. But it looks pretty good for Justin at the moment. All right, here comes the Snapcaster. Probably re-going the Submerge again.
Well, it's still definitely not the Submerge.
Come on, let him cast a Submerge.
It still doesn't really work out properly. Casting
But he
Fatal
can
Push
still target
actually
it.
is a lot better, as he can actually cast that and deal with the Young Pyromancer.
I suppose. But, yeah, look, that definitely seems like the correct line. I mean, I would have targeted the Submerge, but it looks like he chose the correct line instead.
There's probably a reason that Paul Mitchell's in the finals and you weren't. It might be because you were filming.
It might be. Look, it was a way to save face. Was opt to not play the day and then instead
can't misplay if you don't play.
Yeah, that's right. That's
the Angus Mackay special.
We're looking at leaving Goblin Guide, not necessarily to block, but just to not die. I think that Paul would probably be okay with taking the trade, Snapcaster Mage for Goblin Guide, but the Elemental tokens trading for Snapcaster a little bit less appealing, so I think he's just going to take the 2.
Yeah, I mean, potentially also drawing Paul a card and trading with Snapcaster Mage is probably leading into Justin's decision to not attack here. There's always a lot of reasons to potentially leave Goblin Guide back, and if you do kind of end up making this trade, it's obviously better to make it with Goblin Guide as a blocker because you don't necessarily draw a card. Justin opting to run out a Vendilion Clique there
in the draw step. Yeah, hitting the Pyroblast. Paul, for whatever reason, opting to not let it resolve and then wait for the trigger to be put on the stack before he killed it with the Pyroblast.
Yeah.
Then you get a free look.
There's probably a lot of reasons he chose not to do that.
Yeah, look. I would play differently, but that's why Paul's in the hot seat. And he's doing pretty well. I mean, he's still trying to survive, but this deluge has come just in the nick of time. Well, putting Paul to 5.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you feel good about Deluge, but you don't feel great about it.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of Deluge. I like it because it's so it's modal, and you don't have to pay less, and sometimes it's just a better damnation. But the fact of the matter is that when these aggro matchups, like, you don't want to be taking those 2 life. You have to, because otherwise you'll just die. But being forced into it never really feels that good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those situations where, because it is a singleton format, sometimes you end up playing cards that you don't necessarily want to. Like Toxic Deluge being only 3 mana and being kind of adjustable in how much it does Wrath is very powerful. But there are definitely matchups where your life total really matters and you kind of just prefer that you could play as many Damnations as you want, but you get to play 1, so...
Yeah, it also has the benefit of being -1 as opposed -X as opposed to destroy, because it kills indestructible creatures as well.
Yeah,
so.
Dealing with something like a Throne the Lost Troll is
True
pretty nice.
Nemesis as well.
Yeah, I mean, destroy still kills True Nemesis, but
for sure.
It does do that for a pretty low life cost. It also has a benefit, which isn't seen as much, but if your creatures are bigger than theirs, you can always deluge for what their creatures are worth, and you always get to stick around.
Yeah,
which is a pretty nice,
absolutely,
nice thing for your Wrath to do, to be one-sided, even if it does shrink your creatures for that attack. Still a big deal. But in this game, looks like Justin for the last 2 or 3 turns has really only been hitting more land, which is pretty unfortunate. He's been kind of hoping for anything to kind of close out those last 4 points of damage.
Yeah, I mean, press progress wouldn't go astray here, that's for sure.
No, it would in fact be pretty much the perfect amount of damage. And Paul kind of feels confident enough here to run out of Trina Nemesis, let the shields down so that he can start establishing a bit of a clock of his own. Yeah.
And just running out that end of turn fetch into the breeding pool so that he can untap and hopefully not draw another land. Sometimes it's correct. Makes you feel a little bit better when you're fetching those tapped lands, because it means that you don't untap and then draw a pain land when you in fact wanted the shock land when you in fact wanted to not get shocked. This gives you kind of the option. It looks like Justin's sort of sandbagging the island. The forest that he has in hand, which is pretty reasonable because Paul might be considering using some sort of hand disruption, like Thoughtseize or Inquisition, just to have a look, and then Justin reveals that he has 2 lands in hand, and he feels pretty good. So
yeah, I mean, it is also I think it's unlikely, but it's not impossible that Paul would have decided to bring in Blood Moon in this matchup because although the Rug deck is playing Price of Progress and it can operate on a pretty low number of basic lands, it's kind of casting Price as a symmetrical effect.
Yeah.
And just assuming your opponent's life total matters more than yours does. And so it definitely isn't, one of those zero non-basic kind of decks. So there's value in sandbagging the forest in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. I mean, he's also playing Izzet Charm, so it's not completely out of the realms of possibility that you would want to do that. But Paul mana draining that Relic of Progenitor seems pretty reasonable, considering it could have been a redraw. It exiles the graveyard for probably not too much value, so late in the game, but at least he'd get that redraw. But Paul wasn't having any of that. He was more than happy to snap off his last counterspell to stop Justin from getting one more chance at drawing a card.
Yeah.
So going into game 3 now, we it looks like Paul's maybe considering changing his game plan, as is Justin. Looks like the Kalidas might be seeing some time in the sun. Justin considering whether or not it's worth bringing back in the DAC that he took out. Taking out DAC and Daze seems very interesting, but I guess if you're a control deck, you don't really mind paying 1 every now and then, so I guess Daze is less effective in that matchup. But, I mean, the DAC seems... maybe I'm just overvaluing DAC, but it definitely seems like a slam dunk when you're trying to look for answers,
Yeah, sure.
Make sure that you can find the right piece for the right time.
That's definitely true, and I think the Daze decision might just be a play draw kind of thing.
Okay.
In the tempo versus control matchup, dazing their spells when you're on the draw usually just kind of puts you behind in the counterspell war with the mana race. But on the other hand, when you're on the play, the tempo that dazing a spell buys you is a lot more valuable.
Absolutely. Looks like he's swapping out the Dak Faden for the Grim Lavamancer. Just going over his last few options, seeing if there's anything else worth taking in. Paul bringing in the taking out his Hand Disruption completely, which is interesting. Taking out his Hymn to Torak, Thoughtseize, and Inquisition of Kozilek, bringing in another Hydroblast and another couple of cards as well. So definitely seems like a reasonable option. Like, may as well fight it on the stack. Justin doesn't seem to have too much card draw at his disposal, so perhaps not attacking the hand is the right move there as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Hand Disruption is only really good against sort of unfair cards where you don't want to fight over them on the stack and over them on the battlefield. It's pretty bad when you get into kind of a mid to late game stage where you're just looking for like live top decks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Answer your opponent's onboard threats, and Thoughtseize just doesn't fit that bill at all.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate. Also, the life is not completely irrelevant as well. Losing 2 life just to take out a small counterspell or something like that, probably just not worth it. Paul seems to agree, as he's taking out the Hymn to Torak seems like a totally fine line, but maybe that's also a play draw dependency as well.
Well, yeah, it's probably a bit of that. So just generally with Hand Disruption, because you're spending mana to answer your opponent's thing that they don't spend any mana on, it's negative tempo, and when you're playing against a deck that's designed to take advantage of tempo, kind of voluntarily choosing to lose tempo by playing Thoughtseize is kind of playing right into their hands.
Okay.
And so I think boarding those cards out, especially on the draw, is a pretty good decision from Paul.
His opening hands seem pretty good. Justin's got a counterspell and a spell snare. Jace, a couple of lands as well. Paul just going straight for that Grim Lavamancer. Seems to be both pretty strong hands, neither of them considered even mulling to 6, so we should see some good magic here.
Yeah, I mean, both of them had 7s with a couple of lands and a bunch of spells that do things they want to do. So just no need to mulligan. Hell
yeah. We see we might get a little sneaky glance at Paul's hand after this, but it definitely looks like he has the Dreadboy here on the side, and then more lands than he might want, but that Ponder might be able to clean that up as well.
Yeah, I mean, the control decks don't usually mind kind of getting to 4 or 5 lands at the least, so it all seems quite fine. Kind of interesting the fact that just the way the draws have shaped out at the moment. Paul's kind of in the aggressive seat with a 1-drop creature into a 2-drop creature.
Very interesting.
The Pyromancer is going to run into a spells now, but sort of interesting to think that, you know, the game definitely could have shook out in a fashion where Paul was kind of playing the tempo game.
I mean, like, that's the good part about some of these sideboard plans, that you do just have the option to change game plans if your hand requires it, and then because Paul was on the draw, and Justin didn't lead on anything, it seemed like pretty good go ahead to just run that Lavamancer into a potential bolt or chain lightning or anything like that, but he didn't see any of it, and the Grim Lavamancer managed to stay alive, so we might even be able to see an activation from it.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it doesn't die kind of here, it's got the fuel it needs if Paul does decide he wants to do 2 damage somewhere. And just having that open limits the threats that Justin can run out. Like, he's got a Vendilion Clique in hand, but playing that into the shock ability from Grim Lavamancer is pretty horrible value. So
that's good. I wonder if Paul's going to snap off that attack like he did last time, because he didn't have a option of tapping it, but he very well might.
Well, I imagine it's just a mana consideration. If he's got other things to do with his mana, then may as well attack with the Grim Lavamancer. Even if he doesn't have things to do with his mana, the flash creatures that Justin's likely to be playing are things like Vendilion Clique and Snapcaster Mage. So even if he does go for a flash block play, you're perfectly fine trading those cards with Grim Lavamancer.
Yeah.
It's a pretty huge tempo advantage if that happens, so it's all fine, really.
I think I kind of like punching off the Izzet Charm in response to the Search for Azcanta to kill the Grim Lavamancer before Paul has a chance to make another land drop. I mean, it doesn't matter now because he played a Watery Grave instead of a red land and used to ponder, so he might get an extra chance to Izzet Charm the Lavamancer if he so chooses, but he also might just not care about it too much. I mean, as you said before, not being able to play out your Vendilion Clique because of this silly little Lavamancer, it's probably just good enough reason to use the shock ability on Izzet Charm.
Sure, but I think that not doing it just in case Paul does do something that you want to spell pierce with Izzet Charm, with that, you know, that land drop. Maybe he, you know, I don't think that Justin's seen all of Paul's points, so even something like just land Ancestral Recall is within the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
And kind of playing around that by waiting till now to Izzet Charm. Justin hasn't really lost out on anything, except maybe he would run his Izzet Charm into a counterspell. But
yeah. I mean, the other point is that, like, if he kept the red mana up, he could have just waited with Grim Lavamancer instead of attacking. But there was an opportunity where Paul could just play a red land, and then Justin wouldn't be able to save any amount of damage. But, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you're trying to control the board as much as you can as well, so it's a good consideration to just take the 2 damage if you need to. Fortunately, he didn't have to go through that decision because Paul just elected to attack with the Grim Lavamancer, but taking the 2 damage might just be worth it to get that extra information from Paul before he decided what he wanted to do with the Izzet Charm.
Yeah, I mean, Paul only had 2 cards in graveyard at the start of that turn, and 3 once the search was counted. So when you only have a limited number of Grim Lavamancer activations like that, particularly when you've got a Gomag Angler in your hand, you want to fuel. It's pretty high. It's pretty reasonable to just attack with the Grim Lavamancer and try and chip away before you kind of worry about actually activating it.
Yeah.
To go for face. There's just no reason to go for a burn when you can save mana and also save Grim Lavamancer activations.
Yeah, and also just chip him for 1. It's the difference between 1 and 2 in the early game, you know?
Yeah.
Your opponent doesn't have a blocker. Speaking of big giant blockers, this Gomag Angler been saved by the Flusterstorm from Paul's side. This is a hard card for Justin to deal with. I mean, it might be playing some amount of Vapor Snags, or any sort of like bounce spells, but it's actually more likely that he just doesn't, and he's going to attempt to race Paul out of this game. But with a 5/5, it's kind of a different story.
Yeah, a 5/5 and Justin electing to not play out any of the threats from his hand last turn. He had at least a Hooting Mandrills, but he's electing for the unstep Vendilion Clique, which is kind of why
he might actually click himself at this point. Well, Jace Bounce is pretty good if he can find the land, but he might be trying to put something to the bottom so he has that extra draw of finding the land, because we'll wait and see if it resolves or not. But I think I don't mind having the click on the battlefield ready to attack, and also trying to resolve this Jace so that you can bounce click. But
I think the problem with targeting yourself in the hope of hitting another land is that then you don't get to see Paul's hand and you don't know the likelihood of Jace actually resolving. I think you're probably better off in a lot of situations. I think here it's fine to target yourself with the clique, just because Scavenging Ooze is a pretty medium card in this board state.
Yeah.
But I think if you don't have a good card to tuck away, targeting your opponent is totally fine.
Yeah.
Even if he misses on the land drop, he's got Hooting Mandrills for a play, which is pretty reasonable.
Sure. I mean, the click and the Hooting Mandrills, although it's not that ideal of a block because it kills both creatures, if I'm not mistaken.
You can just race. You don't have to block the Gomag Angler. You can just attack.
Well, Vendilion Click definitely helps with the race aspect.
Yeah. You are a little bit behind on the race, but not by enough that I think you should just be kind of immediately going for the block strategy.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. We'll see if he decides to just punch off this Jace. It looks like he's going for it unprotected. Probably asking how many cards Paul has in hand, and then just deciding that tonight's the night.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, I think, only had one card in hand when that Jace was cast. So
okay, that's reasonable.
It's pretty reasonable to... it was two. It was Force of Will and Dreadbore.
Yeah.
But...
Force of Will almost actually being able to cast, but he was one
mana off thanks to Creeping Tar Pit coming into play tapped. Creeping Tar Pit at it again, ruining the day of control plays everywhere. Yeah, cards terrible. I guess everyone should cut it from the decks.
Yeah.
Look at the results.
He will be able to take care of Jace at a great cost of one card, but
it costs that, but it also costs the Gomag Angler being in play.
Yeah.
Which means now if Justin does lead out a threat, kind of before the race was a bit sketchy, even though, if Justin let out a Hooting Mandrills plus Vendilion Clique is certainly more power than just Gomag Angler, but because Paul was kind of on the front foot, it was a bit of a sketchy race. But now that Justin's on the front foot, and he's the only one with the threat,
yeah,
it means that the race, Hooting Mandrills is obviously going to be a Creeping Tar Pit in a race when they're both on 11. So
Gomag Angler can be priced at nearly full price. He definitely has enough to recast it, and it might just be his only choice because he has a Force of Will and Gomag in hand. There's not a whole lot that you can do other than attack with Creeping Tar Pit, and at the cost of basically 4 mana, it's probably just not worth it. You probably just want to play out that Gomag and just stay on block until you can find something better or race.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a different play, running out Gomag is fine. But if Justin does have any kind of interaction for it, and in the form of a counterspell or something like that, it's pretty bad news for Paul.
Oh, devastating.
He probably doesn't have that many lines different. He's kind of got to go for it and hope Justin doesn't have it.
Yeah.
But looks like Justin has it in the form of Remand, which is always what you don't want to see as the kind of the dull creature player.
Yeah.
Having the blue card to Force of Will there is a pretty big deal. He does get to keep the Gomag Angler in play, but now he is down to 0 cards. So it's pretty tense here because Paul can attack with Gomag Angler plus Creeping Tar Pit, which is a lot of damage, and Justin kind of either has to chump block or go to 3 if that happens.
Yeah.
But if Justin can do something on his turn here to kind of change that equation up, then that's a pretty big deal.
Well, if there's any time to do it, it'd be now because Paul is basically tapped out and he has no cards in hand.
Yeah.
So Justin's really thinking over his options. I think he might have a Seed Time in hand, but I could be wrong. But otherwise, he definitely has that Chandra in hand, ready to sort of hopefully regain some card advantage by playing her, ticking her up, and hopefully getting himself out of this issue. Because, yeah, Creeping Tar Pit really stops that board stall dead in its tracks, because I don't think Paul, at this point, cares about paying 4 mana every turn to hit Justin when it's 4-turn clock.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on kind of what Paul draws and the impact of the spells that he has access to at any given point. But, you know, if his plan does become attack with creatures, having that Creeping Tar Pit there makes that plan a lot better.
Yeah. But, I mean, if he ever attacks with the Creeping Tar Pit, Justin's going to get in a pretty big chunk of damage. I mean, he's at 8 now. He's at a theoretical 2 if he can land a hit with his Hooting Mandrills and Chandra. But Paul might just want to go straight for Chandra with the Gurmag. He might just go for the Creeping Tar Pit. He does have a couple of lines open to him, but I think something that he can't do is just wait around.
Well, I think it's pretty likely that regardless of where Paul attacks, if he attacks with that Gurmag Angler, Justin probably feels pretty incentivized to block.
Yeah. Keeping the Chandra alive and drawing 2 cards a turn against your control opponent is a pretty big game.
It definitely is, and particularly if you tick her up again to 6, you force the Creeping Tar Pit to attack her if Paul wanted to die.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, if both of these creatures are going for Justin's face, Justin has to respect that last card in Paul's hand could be Lightning Bolt.
Ooh, yeah, absolutely.
And so, you know, I think regardless of a lot of things, Justin's pretty incentivized to make a block here.
Yeah,
but
which is pretty sad.
I mean, he could also just think that having Hooting Mandrills and having that 4 extra damage is a pretty big deal, because it means that if he draws for turn just about any burn spell, you know, whether that's a Fire Ice, whether it's a Forked Bolt, a Burst Lightning, that 2 damage could get him there with Hooting Mandrills plus a Chandra activation.
Yeah, but he needs to do something soon, because he doesn't really have any cards in hand, and Creeping Tar Pit is lethal here, even through the chump blocking. So we'll see the Chandra tick up. Hopefully it's something influential, because I don't think he has very much in his hand. And, ooh, this could be big game. Playing out this deck now, I mean, it costs him 3 mana, so he's not going to have too much of an option for how to get out of this mess. But if he draws any sort of removal spell for the Creeping Tar Pit, he can chump with the Hooting Mandrills.
That's pretty awkward. I think his best outs are Time Walk or Price of Progress to draw and go to game 4. At this point,
I don't mind doing that.
I mean, if you draw a Price of Progress here, you're going to cast it, because drawing is better than losing.
Yeah.
But a removal spell is pretty shaky. You have to let your opponent untap first, and then if they don't activate the Creeping Tar Pit, you're just so far behind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he pretty much he's definitely hoping for Time Walk, and Price of Progress to draw is kind of second prize. But we'll see if Justin's a truly powerful wizard.
We'll see if he's able to draw off the top, drawing 2 cards, upticking with Dak. He does find the Pyroblast. So Pyroblast, Young Pyromancer, and I think that's not a choke, right? What is
on the far left?
There's a green card here, but
I'm not sure.
Could be anything. But the important thing is that he has a Pyroblast.
Yeah, that is a nice cheap answer to an activated Creeping Tar Pit. It does become a blue and black elemental.
Yeah, it will have to become activated, though, for that to be relevant, which is, as you said before, means that Paul gets to untap, which could be pretty iffy. But
he does get to untap, but on the flip side, it means that if Creeping Tar Pit is being activated, Paul only has so much mana open. It also means that if Paul's line becomes something like Mystic Confluence or Jace to bounce the Hooting Mandrills as a blocker, then that can be Pyroblasted as well. So
Yeah.
I think, and Justin doesn't have a different line, right?
yeah.
He has to take exactly this line
Yeah,
because he doesn't have a choice.
He's leaving himself open to get blown out, but at least he's not dead, you know. So he's gonna try his very darndest. If he does untap, he's kind of okay, but he does have to untap for this to work.
Well, he still has to hit something big if he untaps. He's got kind of 4 draws to to see something between the Dak uptick and the Chandra uptick.
He does have a
But
Deathrite
still-
Shaman in hand to block the next Gamag Angler, so maybe that'll be enough to tick up Chandra.
Yeah, well, it looks like he's hit the Time Walk, so that is a pretty big deal.
I think that's not a Time Walk.
Well, it's
might be a mental misstep.
I think you're wrong.
Okay.
I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay. I appreciate your honesty. But we'll have to just wait and see as
Sure, that
as
second
Justin-
card from the left is definitely Time Walk.
That is so sad.
Oh no,
for
that's
you.
mental misstep. Yikes. Now I look silly.
But that's okay because we're all in this together and we're all a big team. But
Yikes.
getting rid of the Force of Will is probably pretty reasonable. I mean, the threats are on the table. The threats are already here. Sylvan Library probably not worth casting at this point. It's just too late in the game to be playing Miri's Guile every turn.
I mean, if you have the spare mana, because the plan here has to be to block with Deathrite Shaman. If you have the spare mana, you may as well, because it doesn't give you too much additional information, because you would Dak and Chandra through those cards anyway, most likely.
Yeah.
But you'll kind of take anything you can get at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
You're in Justin's
you don't
seat.
have to tick up Dak. I mean, Dak is kind of free to tick up at this point because it doesn't actually cost you a card to do so. You're just putting, you could just put the top two cards of your library into your graveyard and you just get the best pick of the four cards that you have.
It does mean there are some instances where you can put specific cards back with Chandra.
Okay.
And plus through those if you want to plus rather than ultimating. So if you've got a land, for example, that you don't want to draw, you can make sure that's the card that you plus and you get to deal your damage rather than having to draw it. So there is definitely some upside to having Sylvan Library. It's just not a lot of upside.
Yeah. All right, well, here we go. Justin needs to untap and find another blocker, or he needs to kill his opponent this turn. Because he can ulti the Chandra now. She is on 7. She's able to be ultied.
Yeah, so
but
he
he's gonna
just needs 2 spells he can cast.
And he does have that mental misstep in hand. So I see a ponder here. That's possibly all we need to do. Because if we
Ponder and mental misstep.
ponder and mental misstep,
Yeah.
there's also Hydroblast there as well. Probably not worth it, but
Well, Hydroblast, unlike Blue Mental Blast, can target anything.
oh, of course.
It just doesn't do anything unless that thing is red. You
Yeah.
can still cast it.
Okay.
So
It looks like we're just going straight for the ultimate. I mean, he has the win con in hand, right? He's just going to have to hope that it resolves. I mean, if either of these spells... they both...
yeah,
it doesn't
he
matter.
only has to worry. He only has to worry about Stifle. And
Yeah.
if Stifle were a problem, it probably would go for the Chandra Ultimate rather than one of the Chandra Emblem triggers.
Yeah, that's definitely reasonable. All right, well, here we go.
Unless Paul is pulling the sandbag of the century.
All right, he's just going to pay full price for the thing and then
Yeah, it looks
deal
like
10 damage to his
the Chandra
opponent.
Emblem's going to close this game out.
Oh, what a way to win the game. Poor Paul didn't find the... his luck seemed to have run out at the last second because he wasn't drawing too much off the top after that.
Yeah,
A
didn't
couple of
find
good
removal
cards.
for those blockers or a way to deal with those planeswalkers.
Oh my gosh! All right, what a game! That Justin really getting rewarded for his tight playing all day, and he was rewarded with the trophy of National Highlander Champion for 2019 with the shake of the organizer and the tournament organizer Glenn from the Games Capital. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, the Games Capital. Thank you so much, Good Games Australia, and thank you so much, Glenn, as well, for helping us organize the filming for this event. It truly was a wonderful experience, and now we're able to sign a true name Nemesis for Justin's first signature as a complete nutter winner.
Clearly winning the most important event of his life.
Yeah, exactly. He's a grinder. He plays competitive Magic a lot, but he definitely won't mind enjoying that Underground Sea for many years to come, I'm sure. And that's all we had for the Highlander Championships. So thank you so much. We're going to release these videos in one chunk, so you'll be able to enjoy the top 8 in its entirety. Just so we can get it out to you as soon as possible, we want to hit you before GP Sydney, which is this weekend. So please, while you get set up and enjoy GP Sydney and the Highlander event that will come along with that one, I hope you enjoy these videos. And please feel free to watch in next week for the rest of our Highlander Legacy and Modern content coming out of CanCon 2019. Thank you once again all for watching. My name is Angus Mackay. This has been Philip Nicholson, and we've been CBR MTG. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
See ya.